Welcome, the hour being 7 p.m. on Wednesday, June 7th, 2023. We'll be holding a Municipal Building Authority meeting. It's being held at Twila City Hall in the council chambers located at 90 North Main Street. This is also being broadcast on the Twila City YouTube channel. We'll start this meeting with a roll call. Board Member Manzione.
Present.
Board Member Graff.
Present.
Board Member Hanson.
Present.
Board Member McCall.
Present.
I'm Board Member Brady, and I'm also present. Our third item is a public hearing on the new fire station number 3 to receive input from the public with respect to the issuance of bonds not to exceed a maximum principal of $9 million and any potential economic impact that the improvements, facility, or property financed in whole or in part with the proceeds of the bonds may have on the private sector. This is presented by Shannon Wimmer, the Finance Director.
Good evening, Council. As we have talked about in previous meetings, the Twila City Municipal Building Authority is applying for funding through the Community Impact Board, which we refer to as the CIB, for construction of our fire station number 3. One of the requirements for that application is to hold this public hearing and allow the public to comment on this application. They do have very specific items that we need to make the public aware of before they comment. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to read. We have to give them the scope of work and several other details. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to read through this if you'll just bear with me. But it is a requirement of the application that we give them all of this information. So the Twila City Municipal Building Authority is applying for funding for the construction of Fire Station Number 3 through the Community Impact Board, the CIB, in the amount of $8,500,000. The purpose of the loan request is to construct a fire station to serve the growing community and to alleviate a critical need to have efficient access to needed fire equipment to serve our commercial and industrial businesses. Twila City has experienced substantial growth both in commercial buildings and in residential. With the increase in growth and changes in the community, Twila City contracted with the Center for Public Safety Management, LLC, to conduct a public safety study for our fire department. This study confirmed the immediate need for a fire station on the north end of the city. Twila City has been planning for a new fire station for many years and purchased the property for the site in 2010. Available funding has prevented the construction of the building, but as the need has become critical, the Twila City Council has taken the steps to secure the funding for the project through a property tax rate increase, which we did in fiscal year 23. The majority of growth within Twila City has been on the north and northwest areas of the city. It is expected that nearly 90% of future growth will also be in this geographical area, with the majority of available land for both residential and commercial falling within this area. With the commercial growth and growth in the industrial areas within the city, Twila City also purchased a ladder truck to serve the needs of this vital area of our community. However, our outdated fire station number 1 cannot accommodate this asset and cannot be remodeled to house the vehicle, so it's currently stationed at fire station number 2, which adds significant response time to our critical industrial and commercial areas. The construction of the new facility will allow for critical assets to be placed in a location that will enhance our ability to respond to emergencies and significantly reduce critical response times. Fire station number 3 will be constructed on property currently owned by Twila City at approximately 145 East, 1000 North. The property is approximately 2.5 acres and the proposed facility is 6,400 square feet. Twila City currently operates with a full-time fire chief and a full-time fire marshal, with all other members of the department being volunteers. With the growth in the city, it is expected that a full-time fire department will be needed in the future, and this new facility has been designed to accommodate this future need. The city has considered other funding options for funding the facility, including the issuance of sales tax revenue bonds or lease revenue bonds in the public bond market. The public market scenarios provide a payment higher than the city has budget for and would reduce the funds available for construction due to the increased financing costs. The CIB loan provides financing terms that allow the city to pay the bonds with current revenues allocated to the construction of the facility while also providing sufficient construction funds to complete the project in a desirable manner. There are no additional tax increases expected to the residents of Twila City to pay for this project. Funds have already been set aside for the payment of these bonds, and the city has the required escrow payment that will be required at closing. If this project is funded by the CIB, it is expected that the city will repay the loan at an estimated interest rate of 3% over a 30-year term with a yearly payment of approximately $443,000. There will be no impact to the public as far as user fees, special assessments, or any property taxes due on the project or property. So that's the description of the project, and then we'll just take public comment.
Okay, thank you. All right, the time is now the public's. We ask that you, when you come to the mic, you state your name into the mic, and then you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, and then there's a paper that you'll sign over by Holly. So the time is now the public's, if anyone would like to come forward.
Hi, my name is Andrew Lewis, and so first of all, I wanted to say thank you to the leadership, the mayor, the city council for the opportunity to make public comment. I'm not someone that really enjoys this all the time, but I have a situation where I wanted to bring this comment to the mic. So a little bit back, I was involved in a case, became involved in a case that relates to a very integral part of our community. And so the city council and the mayor have had communications with some of you and have appreciated those interactions. I appreciate the transparency, as I've said. The other branch is the judicial side, and my experience with the judicial side was not so pleasant, and I understand that this is often the case. However, with this particular case I was involved in, there was a hearing that I had, an associated court document that attended this hearing, and I was surprised and very disheartened by the blatancy of the errors that resembled sloppiness, dishonesty, and not fairness. I felt bullied after this, and so again, this is a connection to the entity we are here. And so with this situation, I seek the public and the city, the leadership's help in awareness and appropriate channels to make sure that this is addressed the right way. I understand there's a lot of misunderstandings, and I am very sorry for any misunderstandings I've had with any of this situation. However, I'm an open book. You can ask me, and I'm going to tell you what I know. If I'm mistaken, I'm going to say I'm sorry. So anyway, with that, there's some serious issues that I found there. I know my 3 minutes is about up. So thank you for this comment period, and I look forward to addressing this again in the future with gratitude for progress made. I support the law, and I want it to be distributed how it should. Thank you.
Just make sure to sign this paper over here. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment during this MBA meeting? Seeing no one come forward, I will close the public comment period. And we'll move on to item 4, which is our minutes from the May 17th, 2023 Municipal Building Authority Business Meeting. Are there any? I do have some recommended changes on that one. So the date was incorrect. It said 2022 instead of 2023. Board member Graff was not present at the MBA meeting, but it had him listed on the minutes. And then instead of saying Andrew Agard, it said Jim Bolser as the Community Development Director, so correcting that with Andrew's name. And then it had Chairman Manzione. It should have been Chairman Brady. I opened that meeting. And then the resolution 2023-01, it was presented by Shannon Wimmer, the Finance Director. And the minutes stated it was presented by Jared Stewart, the Economic Development Director. And then just on the second page, it says Justin Brady, City Council Chair. It was an MBA meeting, so it should have said MBA Chair. And I think that is all of them. Okay, anyone have any problems with any of those changes? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
So moved. I'll second.
Okay, motion from Board Member McCall, and a second from Board Member Manzione. We'll take it to a vote. Board Member Manzione.
Aye.
Board Member Graff.
Aye.
Board Member Hanson.
Aye.
Board Member McCall.
Aye.
And Board Member Brady, I also vote aye. The minutes are approved with those changes. And then our item 5 is to adjourn. We're adjourned at 7:10.
Okay, and starting at 7:10, we will begin our redevelopment agency. This is a meeting of the redevelopment agency of Tooele City, meeting in a business meeting Wednesday, June 7th, at the Tooele City Hall Council Chambers at 90 North Main. This is also being broadcast on the city's YouTube channel. First item on the agenda is a roll call. Board Member McCall.
Present.
Board Member Hanson.
Present.
Board Member Brady.
Present.
Board Member Graff.
Present.
I'm Board Member Manzione. I'm also present. Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2023-05, a resolution of the Redevelopment Agency of Tooele City, Utah, approving and ratifying an agreement with Terracon Consultants for environmental services at the Tooele City Business Park. And this is presented by Jared Stewart, our Economic Development Director.
Good evening, Council. Thank you. So we have property that the RDA owns and is marketing and attempting to sell, right? And we're having some great success there. And as part of that, we learned that there was a historic rail line that used to come across some of this property and is no longer there, but has left some contaminants in its wake, right? So we had Terracon do some further examination of this property and learned that fortunately the contaminants were restricted just to that, or just contained just to that area along that historic rail line. So that is lead and arsenic. There really wasn't too much of a concern. Apparently it was in line with arsenic levels of in the Salt Lake and Tooele valleys are typically found to be high, not dangerously so, just slightly high. But the lead was quite significant in its level of contamination and needs to be remediated. So this agreement with Terracon is to manage that project. They've done a really good job walking us through the steps of what would be needed anyways for remediation. They've helped us get to this point. And importantly, one of the outcomes of hiring them to help manage this is that they'll provide us a letter at the end stating and certifying that this is contaminated, the site is clear and good to go, and up to standards imposed by the state, I guess, and that's been done correctly. So we could do it without them probably and hire a company, but then we wouldn't have a certification to say, yes, we've done this right. And I think we might miss something, right? So might as well have an expert environmental consultant help us with this. It's a good thing to do. And really with our sale recently to Light Poma, we do have funds from that sale that we can use to pay for some of this remediation. So.
Any questions?
Is the remediation only on that piece of land, or is it?
Correct. It's just at that particular spot. And let's see, let me scroll down through part of this packet to, and they had some options, right? Terracon provided us 2 different options for disposal, right? And it is just, we're only taking the part of the soil that's contaminated and removing that, right? So it's not doing any more than we need to, right? Because it is expensive to just take the dirt and move it. But we should be able to start, if we approve this on June 12th, they said they could begin. And then within 18 days, they should have it removed to the Tooele County landfill. There's an alternate option where we could take it to a different landfill that has lower tipping fees, but larger transportation costs to get it there, right? So there's some pros and cons.
Any other questions? Okay, then I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve Resolution 2023-05.
I'll second.
It's been
Or he
moved-
will.
It's been moved by Board Member Brady and seconded by Board Member McCall to approve Resolution 2023-05. We'll take that to a vote. Board Member McCall?
Aye.
Board Member Hanson?
Aye.
Board Member Brady?
Aye.
Board Member Graff?
Aye.
And I am Board Member Manzio, and I also vote aye. That one passes. Next on the agenda is Resolution 2023-06, a resolution of the Redevelopment Agency of Tooele City, Utah, approving and ratifying an agreement with Direct Push Services LLC for environmental remediation services at the Tooele City Business Park, also presented by Jared Stewart.
All right, so same project essentially, right? This is with the consultant and the contractor who will do the remediation. A larger number, right? It's not cheap to have this work done, and about half of that cost is in tipping fees at the county landfill. So, just over half of that cost will go to the county landfill in order to dispose of the dirt, right? And fortunately for us, I think we can take it there, right? It's considered a non-toxic hazard, I guess, is the term they use, because it doesn't leach or change once you put it there. It doesn't. You can't dump everything at the Tooele County landfill, is what I'm trying to say. But we can dispose of this at our local landfill, which is fortunate. We did receive information for 2 consultants and contractors to perform this work, and contacted them both. Those were both recommended by Terracon because they have the certifications and the trainings that are needed to take care of hazardous material. The second contractor responded, but then communication fell off and they didn't get back to us with other information or quotes. So this was the quote that we received, and it was recommended by Terracon that we did move forward. So
Thanks. Any questions on that? Okay. Would entertain a motion then.
Madam Chair, I make a motion we approve Resolution 2023-06.
I'll second.
Perfect.
Okay, it's been moved by Board Member Hanson and seconded by Board Member Graff to approve Resolution 2023-06. We'll take it to a vote. Board Member McCall?
Aye.
Board Member Hanson?
Aye.
Board Member Brady?
Aye.
Board Member Graff?
Aye.
I am Board Member Manzio, and I also vote aye. That one passes. Thank you, Jared. And item number 5 on our agenda are the minutes of May 3rd, 2023 Redevelopment Agency Business Meeting. Would you have a chance to read those?
I have 2 recommended changes. The date also said 2022, should be 2023. That's on page 1. And then at the end of page 2, it had the approved date as May. It should be June because we're approving it in June.
Perfect. Any other changes? I have those 2 also. Okay. We can take a motion to approve the minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes with the recommended changes.
I'll second it.
Thank you. It's been moved by Board Member Brady to approve the minutes with recommended changes and seconded by Board Member Hanson. Board Member McCall, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board Member Hanson?
Aye.
Board Member Brady?
Aye.
Board Member Graff?
Aye.
I am Board Member Manzio, and I also vote aye. That one passes. And item number 6 is to adjourn. So we are adjourned.
The hour being 7:19. The Tooele City Council is meeting in a business meeting being held Wednesday, June 7th, 2023. It's being held in the Tooele City Council chambers located at 90 North Main Street. It's also being broadcast on the Tooele City YouTube channel. Our first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll please rise and repeat after me. Thank you. Our second item is a roll call. Councilwoman Manzione.
Present.
Councilman Graff.
Present.
Councilman Hanson.
Present.
Councilman McCall?
Present.
I'm Councilman Brady. I'm also present. Our third item is a public comment period. This is the time for the public to come up and make any comment. We ask that you state your name into the mic, that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, and then that you sign the paper over here. So the time is now the public's. Seeing no one come forward, I will close the public comment period, and we'll move on to item 4, which is Resolution 2023-28, a resolution of the Tooele City Council consenting to the mayor's appointment of Chase Noble Randall as library director. This is presented by Mayor Debbie Nguyen.
Thank you, Chairman and Council. It is an honor and a pleasure for me to be here this evening to present to you my appointment for the library director position. Mr. Chase Randall, we went through some interviews, and you're going to love him. I promise you're just going to love him. We loved him when he walked in the door. I want you to know what we have learned about Mr. Randall. He has extensive experience in leadership, in process improvement, communication, project management, data analysis, IT network security and management, budget management, labor management. He has a bachelor's degree, majored in history at Utah State University. Go Aggies. He also has a master's in business administration. He is fluent in Spanish, both reading and writing. As I read off these qualifications that Mr. Randall has, you can see just from that experience, he is going to be able to provide the position of library director very, very well, fill the needs that we have there at the library. And so I am pleased tonight to bring this resolution to you and request your consent to appoint my appointment as library director, Mr. Chase Noble Randall.
Any questions or comments from the council? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Resolution 2023-28, a resolution of the Tooele City Council consenting to mayor's appointment of Chase Noble Randall as library director.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Councilman Graff, a second from Councilwoman Manzione. We'll take it to a vote. Councilman McCall.
Aye.
Councilman Hanson.
Aye.
Councilman Graff.
Aye.
Councilwoman Manzione.
Aye.
I'm Councilman Brady. I also vote aye.
Before we do the swearing in, I just wanted to make a couple of other announcements or just some comments. During this transition to a new library director, Rachel and Steve, that both work down at the library as supervisors, they have stepped up and filled this position for a couple of months. I know Steve is here tonight. All of the staff have really stepped up, but under the leadership of Steve and Rachel, and I do appreciate the service that they have provided to us, to our residents, to keep things going. And now I'd like to bring Chase up. By the way, he will begin working next Monday, June the 12th. And first I'm going to ask him if he'd like to say a few words. Thank you so much to his family. There's several of you here tonight. Thank you so much for your support of Chase, and that now he's going to be part of our family too. So that's wonderful. Chase, come on.
Thank you so much, Mayor Nguyen. I just wanted to take a second and say I am excited, humbled, and honored that you've consented to my appointment as the library director. And I thank you so much for this grand opportunity. I look forward to working with all of you and getting to know all of you better. I've seen most of you before, and I know a couple of you, and I look forward to working with you and with the rest of the city to be able to help continue to serve and build up this great city. I've been in Tooele now for over 3 years, and I look forward to many more and be able to continue to be a part of this great community. Thank you so much for this grand opportunity.
Now we're going to have the swearing in of Chase Noble Randall as the library director. This is presented or done by Michelle Pitt, the city recorder. Okay.
I, Chase Noble Randall,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and that I will discharge the duties
of my office
of my office
as Library Director
as Library Director
with
with
fidelity.
fidelity. Thank you. Thank you all.
I feel like we should have a fancy pen
Yeah.
with a plume or something.
All right, congratulations, Chase. We look forward to working with you as well. We'll move on to item 6, which is a public hearing and motion on ordinance 2023-21, an ordinance of the Twila City Council amending Twila City Code Chapter 4-8 regarding local streets and substandard local streets. This is presented by Paul Hansen, the city engineer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Council. This is an ordinance that really has been started and worked on by many others at the city. If I could acknowledge, Jim Bolster, our former Community Development Director, took a major role in helping to get this moving. Also, Andrew Agard, our current Community Development Director, our Fire Chief, Matt McCoy, Roger Baker, City Attorney, and we could go on and on. It's not a one-person deal in any sense. This project is brought about because of a couple of primary reasons. We have some streets that are considered substandard. Substandard meaning that they are old historic streets that fall less than the 60-foot right-of-way, which is currently in our plan. The current right-of-way has 34 foot of asphalt. These old streets are certainly valid. They're ours. The public accesses and we maintain them. But we felt with some changes that there was a need to bring an update to it. And a secondary aspect to this rule is resultant from House Bill 406, which was recently passed within the state legislature. In this revised code, municipalities are now prohibited from requiring asphalt widths of more than 32 feet for local class residential streets, unless there's a showing of significant need for safety or other significant issues. But primarily, the state has told us what our smaller class residential roads can be. The third item is, as we've been going through this ordinance, we've found a need for some miscellaneous correction. Sometimes ordinances are put together with safety standards at the time they're written, and you find out 15, 20, 30 years later that things change, and it's a time to revisit them. So let me start with the first aspect, which is the roads. The image, which is very small for you to see and for the public, it's not intended to be legible, reflects a map that was created back in 1882 of Twila City. Now, as you all know, Twila City was organized in 1853. But this is the earliest plat that I've been able to come across that shows the original layout of Twila City. And it's not immediately apparent which streets are which, but the streets we're talking about tonight are primarily 150 West, 50 West, and 50 East, or Garden Street. Those are the ones that we're referring tonight. When this plat was created, measurements weren't made in feet, they were made in terms of chains, or rods, or poles. The definition of a chain is 22 yards, 4 poles, or 66 feet, and there will be a quiz following the council meeting to see if you can remember all of that. With that in mind, back when this plat was created, 150 West was platted with 0.75 chains, or 49.5 feet. The same for 50 West. 50 East was only platted with half a chain, or 33 foot in width. In 1980, the Twila County Recorder reaffirmed these widths on what is referred to as Plat A. Again, it shows 150 West with those same dimensions, 50 West and Garden Street, all with those same criteria. When we got looking at those streets, the thing that became abundantly apparent early on was that we're changing from a nature of having long, narrow lots which was the original intent for someone to access off of 200 West or 100 West, and then be able to access the rear of their property for livestock or other uses. But with the recent development trend, we're seeing a significant increase on people splitting those lots off and now putting primary residences accessing on those substandard streets. Again, they're legal streets, the rights of way are there, and we're going to follow them. So we involved a lot of people looking at what we needed to do, if anything. You always start with, do I need to change anything? And sometimes you say, nope, I don't, and you carry on. But we involved many of the city departments and staff in considering whether or not it was appropriate, looking at vehicle safety and width. The fire department was very good to take their fire equipment down on some of those roads, and were able to find that it is difficult for them to get down them and to fight a fire if we had such an event. We also have concerns about school access, sidewalks, and other items. So under the mayor's direction, and with significant field work that was done, the city is proposing to change the standard, which does 5 key items for the new code. It would define the right-of-way sections. It would define the right-of-way width for each section. By section, I mean 400 south to 200, 200 to 100, 100 to Vine, so on. And the reason we looked at it by each section is because over the years, there's been some encroachment by people as they've developed their property. And there are some properties that are frankly within the rights of way that the plats provide. But we want to be sensitive and not just say tear everything down. We decided to go look at it and see if there's a way we could work with what's there and solve the problem today and then go to the next step later on if it was needed. Because of that, we found that within each of those street sections, the actual improvements may vary and change. We also wanted to talk about curb and gutter requirements, which help maintain the road, help with stormwater management, and also addresses if sidewalk is required, and if it is required, where is it required? On one side only or on 2 sides? And these are example tables. This is 150 West, where you can see on this section there's 8 different sections. The existing right-of-way width is shown in the 3rd column over. It's consistent with the exception of that very top one. Over the years, as people have developed, there have been some exactions of additional right-of-way to provide for some of these improvements, but these are general rights-of-way questions. The existing asphalt surface width on 150 West varies anywhere from 14 feet to 33 feet. 50 West is another example, similar type information. And Garden Street or 50 East, the same type of situation. So this information is now proposed within the tables. And if you'll notice as you go across the width, there's a column, it's the 5th column over that says asphalt minimum. That 30-foot reflects the International Fire Code access requirements where we have to access a fire hydrant. So that's why we've selected 30 feet. We can make the improvements within 30 feet for the most part. We just may not be able to put sidewalk or other improvements, and that's why there's some varied. But you see on some of these sections where it says curb and gutter is required or not, it also gives guidance on where sidewalk is required, if any, and then there's general comments and notes that go with it. And that same information is on each of those 3 roads that we're talking about. The third is it removes a park strip requirement on these roads. And as a result of that state legislation, it formally reduces the pavement width from our current standard of 34-foot asphalt to 32-foot. Many cities in the state are less than 32 feet. They can stay less, that's fine, but we don't feel it appropriate and prudent for us to reduce ours any lower than the state minimum standard, primarily, again, for fire access and to accommodate parking and other challenges that come up with it. The result of that, as shown on the slide, is that it reduces that associated right-of-way width from a 60-foot standard to 58-foot. Now, this state reduction only applies to local class residential streets, unless, of course, there's a showing for other improvements based on bus traffic or something other like that. Our other right-of-way sections remain unchanged. The other sections are principally 66-foot, 84 foot and 106 foot that we use as a city. Those will remain unchanged. And this is the cross-section for the new 58-foot right-of-way. It still has the 5-foot park strip. It still has the 5-foot sidewalk. It still has curb and gutter. What this means is that should the council move forward in approving this ordinance tonight, any new application for plating in the city at the final plat stage would have the option to reduce down to this street section. That may include some that have already submitted preliminary. My speculation is some may choose to gain an extra 2 feet of lot size. Some might say, I'm fine, let's just move ahead and get the development built. But this ordinance would apply citywide on all of our residential streets, not just those 3 substandard streets that we talked about. It also repeals the infill overlay district street design section. That code is provided in your packet, and Roger has been very good to redline and strike out the changes in and out. And it does another item that got cut off on the page, and I apologize. It also corrects certain editorial changes within the code that correct for example, changes in vertical roadway design. How big of a slope you can have, what the visibility has to be, what the stopping distance should be, and criteria like that. And there's a few other changes in it, again, that just bring us up to current standards as we look across the globe. The one thing we have also written into that standard, though, to help us to not have to update it when it changes tomorrow again, is to say, here's the current code, but it applies to the current code of this. It's the same thing we do with a lot of our APWA standards or drinking water standards or others. We just automatically comply with those new standards as we move forward. That is the base sum of this ordinance change that is presented to you tonight. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions or comments from the council? I appreciate all the work that went into this. I know it's been a topic for a long time, so thank you to all the staff.
Thank you.
Okay, this is an ordinance that requires a public hearing, so we will open the time up to the public. We ask that you state your name into the mic, keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, and sign the paper. The time is now the public's. Seeing no one come forward, I will close the public comment period and entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. I think this is a good ordinance. Some of these things have come up at Planning Commission in the recent past, and they've been questioned. So I think this will clarify a lot of things moving forward for development there. So I'd like to make a motion that we adopt ordinance 2023-21, an ordinance of the Twila City Council amending Twila City Code Chapter 4-8 regarding local streets and substandard local streets.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Councilwoman Manzione, a second from Councilman McCall. We'll take it to a vote. Councilwoman Manzione?
Aye.
Councilman Graff?
Aye.
Councilman Hanson?
Aye.
Councilman McCall?
Aye.
I'm Councilman Brady. I also vote aye. That passes 5-0. Item 7 is a public hearing and motion on ordinance 2023-22, an ordinance of the Twila City Council amending provisions of the Twila City Code related to landscaping and water conservation. This is presented by Andrew Agard, the Community Development Director.
Thank you, members of the City Council. So we are looking at making changes to the landscape standards as found in the Twila City ordinances. There's quite a bit involved in this ordinance amendment. The purposes behind this is to, number one, conserve water. As the City Council is aware, water is a fairly strenuous issue right now in the city, finding sufficient water to satisfy the needs of development. The other reason is we need to, in order to qualify for the state of Utah's Flip Your Strip and Turf Buyback initiatives, our ordinances need to accurately reflect those qualifications. So we can't have ordinances requiring sod and turf grass and still qualify for those initiatives. The proposed amendments also codify certain dryscape elements for use in our landscapes that currently are not permitted by the city code, and it clarifies what is considered as dryscaping. The ordinance amendments affect a handful of ordinances. Most of them are in Title VII, the Uniform Zoning Code, particularly the ordinances that relate to residential and commercial development. But there's also some amendments proposed for Title IV related to sidewalk construction and park strips. And I'll just briefly go through what some of those ordinance amendments are. There are some changes that are proposed for all of the types of developments. Namely, the ordinance requires all street trees to comply with the Tooele City Tree Selection Guide. Ordinance amendments require drip or bubbler-style irrigation systems for planting used in dryscapes. We don't want to see any more spray heads in areas watering shrubs and trees. And then it prohibits the use of sod or turf grass in the park strips. We want to see drought-tolerant landscaping and dryscapes in the park strips. And the ordinance amendments also authorize the use of artificial turf as an appropriate ground cover in these landscaped areas. There are some changes that are unique to each ordinance in Title IV, Chapter 11A, Residential Park Strip Landscaping. This ordinance amendment will increase the amount of time one can request the release of a tree bond from 2 years to 3 years. This was done because we find that people aren't getting their bonds released within 2 years, so extending that gives them a little more time to do that. It also helps us verify the trees are still alive and surviving. The other amendment in Title IV relates to park strips and park strip trees. If a park strip is narrow or narrower than 5 feet, the ordinance would require that the trees be placed behind the property line in the front yard behind the sidewalk. That still maintains the street tree appeal and appearance and keeps them out of a narrow space where they would have a better chance of growing. In Title VII, Chapter 11, Design Review, this is our site plan design ordinance. This prohibits the use of sod or turf grass in all industrial zoning districts and limits the use of sod and turf grass in commercial and mixed-use zoning areas to areas involving active recreation such as sports fields or play areas. And then in our multifamily residential ordinances, encourages water-wise plantings wherever possible, and then limits the use of sod or turf grass in multifamily residential developments to only areas involving recreation such as a sports field, play area, or other. And then all perimeter areas that serve no recreational value shall be landscaped with dry and water-wise landscaping. Title VII, Chapter 14 is our single-family residential ordinance. This ordinance would apply, or the changes in this ordinance would apply to all developments having received preliminary plan approval after April 1st, 2023. All lots with 250 square feet of landscaping or more shall meet this requirement. And what it does is it limits sod or turf grass in the front and side yards to 50% of the total landscaping. The remaining landscaping may be cobble, mulches, artificial turf, anything that doesn't use a lot of water. Title VII, Chapter 19 is our subdivision ordinance. This proposed amendment increases sidewalk concrete thickness and then requires street trees to be spaced every 30 to 40 feet. And the Planning Commission held a public hearing on May 24th concerning this item and forwarded a positive recommendation to the City Council by a vote of 4-2. So those are the amendments that are proposed in regards to our landscaping ordinances. If you have any questions about those, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
The changes would be for new houses being built in the community,
developments.
correct?
Correct.
New developments. What's the average size of a park strip? Because I can't remember what you said. Was it 5 feet or less? It has to be on the, it can't be in the park strip,
Yeah,
right?
if the park strip is narrower than 5 feet, the ordinance recommends that the trees go behind the property line or inside the sidewalk, inside the property line. Typically, park strips are 5 feet wide. We do have some areas in the city where they're a lot wider than that.
So most of the trees would have to be put like in the yard, not in the park strip.
Well, in areas where we have the sidewalk where it extends to the curb, they'd have to be behind the sidewalk. I'm not aware of any new developments that would have park strips that are narrower than 5 feet. So the trees could be planted in the park strip in most of our new developments.
And then I read in, it's Exhibit A, it says, I just want clarification under, it says park strip landscaping. It says that seed, sod, or lawn shall be prohibited. Park strip landscaping shall be hardscapes, i.e. colored and/or stamped concrete, decorative rock, mulches, or similar decorative materials that do not require irrigation. So is that saying that no, like, drought-tolerant plants can be planted in the park strip?
No, that's not the intent. The intent is to permit drought-tolerant plantings, shrubs and trees in the park strip. It's just to avoid the sod.
Okay.
Sod uses a lot more water than shrubs and trees do.
Okay. I just didn't think it read that way, like,
Sounds like
that
it
it's
doesn't.
still an option to have some irrigation there, just not sod. That's the goal of this, right, is to get rid of sod in those areas.
Councilman, I think if you read on in the section, it allows for trees and water-wise shrubs.
Okay. Is that under the park strip trees section, maybe?
The section you were just reading. Park strip landscaping 4-11A-1, sub 1.
Park strip shall also include street trees as required. Okay, and may include water-wise shrubs. Okay, perfect.
Yes, yes.
Just want to make sure we weren't putting concrete everywhere.
Yeah. We still want some plantings in there if people want to do
Yes.
them.
Are there any other questions or comments?
There were some questions at Planning Commission. Hopefully I can remember them, but one of them was on enforcement and how we make sure it's done and how we make sure it's maintained afterwards. Because a lot of times when people throw down rock, and remember, we're not focusing on zero-scape, it's zero-scape, but when the rock is down, then the weeds come up. And how will we make sure that that's taken care of? We're going to talk about that later, I think, on our agenda, but just to bring it up here.
That's a good point. The ordinance amendments that we're proposing right now don't have any enforcement teeth behind them, but there are other nuisance ordinances that we could use to enforce weed problems and maintenance issues.
So it'll be part of the nuisance ordinance, so that we have, weeds that come up will be part of the nuisance that we can actually enforce.
Yes.
So the question is, and I'm not going to pretend that I know all about landscaping, but would it be difficult or would it be too concise to say if gravel or rock is being put in that there's a protective barrier placed under the rock? Because wouldn't that address the issue?
Weed barrier does address the issue for about a year. The problem is the wind blows dust and dirt on top of the weed barrier, and the weeds germinate on top of it. There's also some weeds that manage to poke themselves through the weed barrier. So weed barrier works for a while, but it's a temporary solution.
Interesting. Okay.
Our weeds are powerful.
Unfortunately.
I know.
Very powerful.
So the go-aheads.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it just, they do require a lot of, dryscapes require a lot of maintenance. That's just the way they are, especially in Utah.
I have had several people reach out to me and ask for this type of ordinance because they're interested in flipping their strip. And I have had several people reach out to me after this has been, we talked about it at a work meeting, it's been at the Planning Commission meeting, expressing pleasure that we're going to have this ordinance because they'll be able to do that. And because of the water situation here, that we do need to be conservation minded and in our water use, especially in areas that aren't being used for play. So I appreciate all the work that's gone into it, and I think a lot of good things are part of this.
And you had mentioned 50% of the front yard and side yard has to be something other than sod, right, or turf. Where does the side yard start? Is that like referring specifically to corner lots? Is that why we word it that way, or?
So a side yard starts at the front plane of the house and extends to the back plane of the house. So everything in front of the front plane of the house is the front yard. Everything between the front plane and the back plane of the house is the side, and everything behind the rear plane is the rear yard. So it would be all that side and all the way up to the front. You take the total square footage of that, and then 50% of that would need to be dryscape.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Nope. I like it.
I do have one more question from Planning Commission.
Wait.
No, it's not. About, and I tried to read it and I didn't see it for sure, about a requirement for a bubbler irrigation system for the trees in the park strip. Is it required? Because it's required for some things, but I think that came up that it might not be required for the park strip trees.
The ordinance refers to drip irrigation systems, which is basically the same thing as a bubbler.
Okay,
Just,
so it's covered.
just the way the water is emitted. So yes, the ordinance does cover that for park strip trees.
Okay, perfect. Got to make sure we have all the questions answered. I think that was it.
Okay, this ordinance also requires a public comment period. So the time is now open to the public. We ask that you state your name into the mic. Keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Time's now the public's. Seeing no one come forward, I will close the public comment period and turn the time back to the council. One last chance for any questions, comments.
I'm done.
Okay, I wanted to give you one more chance, so. All right, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, make a motion that we approve ordinance 2023-22.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Councilman McCall, a second from Councilman Graff. We'll take it to a vote. Councilman McCall?
Aye.
Councilman Hanson?
Aye.
Councilman Graff?
Aye.
Councilwoman Manzione?
Aye.
And Councilman Brady, I also vote aye. That passes 5-0. Item 9 is public hearing and motion on ordinance 2023-27, an ordinance of the Twila City Council amending the Twila City General Plan land use map for the Twila City Business Park zoning district and designating the district as a light industrial land use category. This is presented by Andrew Agard.
Thank you, Chairman Brady, members of the City Council. This application is a precursor to your next application and is a necessity. We need to get this one done before we can consider the zoning map amendment. It applies to the 300-plus acres outlined in red on the aerial photograph. These are properties that you're familiar with that are owned by the Twila City RDA and a handful of other properties. They extend from about 1220 south to about 300 south in the north, and then from the Union Pacific Rail Corridor to 1100 west. The properties are currently designated on the city's general plan, land use map of the general plan, as regional commercial. The regional commercial designation requires the RC Regional Commercial Zoning District and the RD Research and Development Zoning District. This designation prohibits industrial zones and, as such, industrial land uses. The zoning map amendment on your agenda tonight will propose a business park that has a handful or a number of light industrial uses. So in order to make sure that our zoning map is compliant with our land use map, we need to change the land use map from regional commercial to light industrial in order to make sure that we're compliant with the city's requirement that our zoning map complies with our land use map. So that's what's being requested here for this property, is that the land use be changed to light industrial.
All right, any questions or comments from the council? Okay, this is also a public hearing, so I will turn the time over to the public. Same rules as stated previously. Okay, seeing no one come forward, I will close the public comment period and turn the time back to the council and entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve ordinance 2023-27.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Councilwoman Manzione and a second from Councilman Hanson. We'll take it to a vote. Councilwoman Manzione?
Aye.
Councilman Graff?
Aye.
Councilman Hanson?
Aye.
Councilman McCall?
Aye.
I'm Councilman Brady. I also vote aye. That passes 5-0. And I accidentally skipped item number 8, so we're going to go back one. Wasn't very good at counting today. So item 8 is a public hearing on motion on ordinance 2023-26, an ordinance of the Twila City Council vacating a dedicated public utility and drainage easement on Lot 24 of the Gordon Hollows Phase 1 subdivision, presented by Andrew Agard.
Thank you, council members. So Aaron Bird is requesting this easement vacation. He is doing so in order to be able to construct a detached accessory structure on his property that will encroach into some public utility easements. This is his property, highlighted in red on the aerial photograph. You'll see the little concrete pad down in the corner. That's where he would like to install his new building. The lot is encumbered with public utility and drainage easements highlighted in red. You'll notice the one easement where he wants to put the building is considerably wider than the other public utility easements. That is because there is a Rocky Mountain Power transmission line running through that area. Now, Mr. Bird has provided the necessary letters from each one of the utility companies permitting him to encroach within those easements, and therefore he's here requesting a vacation of that easement, which essentially will amend the plat and allow him to encroach within those. There are no utilities other than those overhead power lines within those easements, and the companies have indicated that they don't need to put them in there. Tooele City has also provided a letter that the Public Works Department has indicated that they also are okay with him encroaching in that easement. So that's what's being requested. I know he's anxious to get his building going, so he's happy to be here and get this done tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Okay. This ordinance also requires a public hearing, so we will turn the time over to the public with the same rules stated previously. Seeing no one come forward, I will close the public comment period and entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion we approve ordinance 2023-26.
I'll second.
Okay, motion from Councilman Hanson, a second from Councilwoman Manzione. We'll take it to a vote. Councilman McCall.
Aye.
Councilman Hanson.
Aye.
Councilman Graff.
Aye.
Councilwoman Manzione.
Aye.
And Councilman Brady, I also vote aye. That passes 5-0. Moving on to item 10, a public hearing and motion on ordinance 2023-28, an ordinance of the Tooele City Council enacting Tooele City Code Chapter 7-16B, amending Section 7-13-1, creating the Tooele City Business Park zoning district, and amending the Tooele City zoning map accordingly, presented by Andrew Agard.
Thank you, Chairman Brady, members of the council. This is the follow-up to the previous land use map amendment, and it's actually more than just a zoning map amendment. This request to amend the zoning map also includes the creation of a new zoning district and the adoption of a zoning ordinance creating standards and qualifications for all development that occurs within that zoning district. The current zoning on the subject properties, as you can see, is light industrial and RD, research and development. The proposed zoning for the property will be the TCBP, Tooele City Business Park Zoning District. At the public hearing, when the initial CSD was being considered, there were numerous concerns related by the public to the Planning Commission concerning having industrial uses located in such close proximity to existing residential uses. As we were working to form the new development standards and codes for this business park, we took special care to preserve the residential integrity of those single-family and multifamily residential uses. This is the concept plan for the business park. It should be noted that lot boundaries and building footprints, as well as the Mid-Valley Highway corridor, are not finalized and may be subject to some alterations in the future, depending on what UDOT does, and also what each individual business will need when they locate within the business park. The zoning in the business park, we're proposing to divide into 3 sections. Section A is highlighted in green, Section B in purple, and Section C in blue. Section A, as you can see, is closest to the residential zones and the residential uses. Section C is located closer to the railroad corridor and is the furthest away from the residential zones. Each section is designed in the Tooele City Business Park Ordinance with uses and development standards that are specific to its location. Section A is closest to the residential properties. Section A is limited to commercial and office-type uses only and prohibits industrial uses. Building height in Section A is limited to 35 feet, which is the same as the building height limitations in a residential zone, with one exception. Hotels in that area are permitted to go to 50 feet. That is done in order to facilitate 4 floors of rooms, I believe. But that's the only use that can exceed that. Everything else is at 35 feet. Section A requires additional architecture on building facades facing residential uses, also building facades facing public streets. Roof lines in Section A are to be pitched roof, and mechanical rooftop equipment cannot exist on the roof. It has to be inside the building or on the ground. Staff has designed Section A to serve as a protective buffer between the industrial uses and the residential uses, and we have tried to minimize the impact to these residential properties by requiring lower intensity uses, better building architecture, and reduced building height. Section B begins the industrial uses. However, Section B is focused towards lighter industrial uses that do not generate impacts surrounding properties in the form of noise, glare, vibrations, odors, dust, and so forth. In this section, the buildings can extend up to 50 feet in height. Section C is where the heavier industrial uses are permitted. Section C is immediately adjacent to the railroad corridor. And in this zone, there will be permitted more heavier industrial activities. In buildings in this area can go up to 70 feet, and that is the same height that you would find in the standard industrial zone. Now, you may ask, why do we want a 70-foot tall building? It's not likely you're going to get a 70-foot tall industrial building. However, sometimes these industrial uses have storage silos and things that could require some additional height. The new code will establish architectural standards for building frontages and facades facing public streets, as well as facing residential structures. The code also establishes landscaping standards for frontages, parking areas, and critical areas. It establishes fencing standards for businesses involving accessory outdoor storage. And in regards to signage, the new code will defer to Tooele City's existing sign ordinance, with an additional provision that off-premise signs and billboards shall not be considered adjacent to the Mid-Valley Highway corridor. And then parking regulations shall follow the established city parking codes. The new code also establishes criteria for wind turbines, limiting the height of a turbine to 160 feet at the top of the blade and requiring the turbines to be set back 115% of the total turbine height from all property lines. Wind turbines will only be permitted in sections B and C. The new zoning code will also include a table of commercial uses specific to the Tooele City Business Park zoning district. Staff diligently considered each use in the city's current table of commercial uses and pared the table down to 2 pages instead of 6 or 7. Many heavy industrial uses permitted in the standard industrial zone are not permitted in this new zone. Uses such as hazardous material storage and chemical production are not permitted in this new zone. Recycling yards and auto wrecking yards are also not permitted in this zoning district. We tried to focus on uses that generate more jobs and conduct most of their business inside of a structure and can maintain an aesthetically pleasing industrial environment. Staff has heard the public concerns, and we have diligently worked to form a new code that preserves the residential integrity of the existing residences to the east, but also enables the city and other property owners within the development to develop and utilize their property with rail access for industrial uses. This proposed ordinance represents a good compromise and demonstrates a good faith effort on behalf of the city to protect those existing residents by keeping the least impactful development closest to the residential uses and the most impactful development the furthest away. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on May 24th and forwarded a positive recommendation to the City Council, a vote of 6-0. We did have a second public hearing in regards to this, and most of the comments that were registered were largely in support of it. There were still some concerns about truck traffic and other things, but the public was generally satisfied with what we're proposing. So that's the new Tooele City Business Park. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I know that Jared Stewart can also address any questions you might have as well. So.
Were the different areas recommended based off property lines? Is there ever a risk that something can be adjusted, like a property owner wants to be part of 2 different sections?
That's a possibility. However, if we ratify or adopt this as part of the code, it would have to go through a zoning map amendment process. So it would have to have council approval to do so.
Okay.
And we have been working with an, I don't know, a contractor that's trying to help us develop the business park. And they have some, guidelines of, they're not set in stone, clearly, because we don't have businesses for them, but kind of like a layout of how it would work with the rail line and where buildings could be placed. So there is kind of a conceptual idea, at least, that we're working off of.
And Councilwoman, we've incorporated the CRS rail park design into the map of the zoning district, so it's a composite of the two ideas.
Does it limit the amount of wind turbines in the whole project, or was it just 160 feet?
That's more of a self-limiting situation because that turbine has to be located inside the property from all property lines. So you got to have a pretty big property to do that, so smaller properties aren't going to be able to put one up. That restriction in of itself will limit how many can go in. But but there is no limitation in the code as per numbers or of turbines.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments?
I appreciate all the work that's been done, especially from the beginning to now. Yeah, it's a lot of work.
I think it is a great compromise and be good for everyone. Okay, this is also a public hearing, so I will turn the time over to the public. Same rules that we stated previously.
We have a very talkative audience today.
Yeah. Last public chance, right? Oh, I thought you were coming up. Okay. Okay. I will close the public comment period, seeing no one come forward, so I will entertain a motion from the council.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve ordinance 2023-28.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion from Councilwoman Manzio and a second from Councilman Hanson. We'll take it to a vote. Councilwoman Manzio?
Aye.
Councilman Graff?
Aye.
Councilman Hanson?
Aye.
Councilman McCall?
Aye.
I'm Councilman Brady. I also vote aye. That passes 5-0. Item 11 is a preliminary subdivision plan request by Curdy Halem for the proposed Halem subdivision to include 3 single-family residential lots on approximately 3.37 acres located at approximately 400 East, 1000 North in the R1-8 residential zoning district. This is presented by Andrew Agard.
Thank you, members of the council. So this preliminary plan subdivision applies to the wedged-shaped parcel highlighted in red on the aerial photograph. It's immediately north of 1000 North at about 400 East. And as mentioned, the property is zoned R18 as our properties to the east. To the south, we have some R17, and then we have some undeveloped RR5 to the west. The application proposes to create 3 single-family residential lots ranging in size from 8,000 to 8,700 square feet, in addition to the accompanying public right-of-way to provide access to those lots. The right-of-way is the typical, currently the 60-foot wide local class street with sidewalks and park strips on each side. You'll notice that the middle canyon drainage runs to the east side of the proposed subdivision. Mr. Halim has done everything he could to stay out of the drainage and to not tinker with it because he did not want to involve FEMA. So he is not altering that in any way, shape, or form. It will remain in its current unaltered state. There is an emergency vehicle turnaround provided at the end of the street that will have to be paved. That is for fire trucks and so forth. And then there's a stormwater detention basin located a little further north that he will not be discharging into the drainage. He'll be retaining the water there. The subdivision as proposed meets all of our standards for development, and we are recommending approval with the conditions listed in the report.
I have one question about the drainage. So that's where the trail is going, the England Acre Trail on a little bit farther east. Mm-hmm. Is there a way to preserve this so that eventually someday a trail could be put in that area? In my mind, it would connect the England Acre Trail with the, what is that road? Pine Canyon Trail that D.R. Horton's
Other
building.
Western Acres?
Yes.
So when Mr. Halim first started this process, he started it, I'm thinking 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago. It's been a while. He's had some difficulties in regards to finding water rights, so it's taken him some time. At that time, he was interested in selling that to the city. At that time, there was no D.R. Horton, there was no Western Acres, and there was no trail going down through England Acres either. And so it was something that we instructed him, not now. But the situations have changed. And I have reached out to Mr. Halim to see if he'd be willing to negotiate selling the property or maybe allowing an easement over it for a trail. I have not heard from him yet. But I think that he probably would be open to something because he expressed interest in the beginning of breaking that property loose. So we're trying to see what he's willing to do.
That's a good idea. I was just in Layton visiting my grandkids, and in Layton, it looks like they have a trail system, but at some places they must not have the right-of-way. So the trail just goes to their sidewalk, and the sidewalk in that section is asphalt instead of cement, so it looks like the trail in some places just goes like this, but it's kind of windy because it's gone to the sidewalk, and I wondered if that's even something that we could ever consider, since it is going to have sidewalk and such, if that's something we could even consider.
That is an option, and I don't have the slide with me, but I believe your package had the site plan, and there is a park strip and a sidewalk on the east side of that road. He still has to do final plat. We can work with him about possibly just putting that into an asphalt trail.
I mean, I'm open to either suggestion, but I think you're right that we need to take advantage right now.
Yeah. Yeah, at some point, if we could connect the trail from Pine Canyon Road, you could get all the way to the East Bench, which would be amazing.
Yeah, and DR Horton's done a nice job with their trail to the north, too, so.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the council? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the preliminary, excuse me, I'm losing my voice worse tonight, preliminary subdivision plan request by Kurt Hallam.
Second.
Kurtie Hallam, yeah.
Right, a motion from Councilman Hanson, a second from Councilman McCall. We'll take it to a vote. Councilwoman Manzione?
Aye.
Councilman Graff?
Aye.
Councilman Hanson?
Aye.
Councilman McCall? Aye. And Councilman Brady, I also vote aye. That passes 5-0. Item 12 is ordinance 2023-25, an ordinance of the Tooele City Council enacting, or just Tooele City, should it say? I don't know. It just says Tooele City. Enacting Tooele City Code Section 8-4-7 to reinstate civil penalties for public nuisances, presented by Roger Baker, the city attorney.
Thank you, Council. As we discussed in the work meeting, communities everywhere struggle with nuisance conditions, either because of their appearance or because they're dangerous or other things. And so we have a range of tools that we use to try to address these. The tool we've used mostly in the last decade has been an administrative nuisance abatement tool. And we have a whole flow chart that shows how that tool works. It can be cumbersome, but it is effective. In some cases, a simple ticket with a fine would be a more effective and efficient way to address some of these situations. And after a decade of experience, we're recommending that the civil penalty, the civil citations, be put back in the code as a tool available for city personnel to use. So we would, the primary tool would be the civil citation. The second tool would be the nuisance abatement, and we also have criminal penalties available if we need them. We took the opportunity to clarify code enforcement officer authority as opposed to law enforcement officer authority. We also indicated that graffiti is a nuisance the moment it goes up, and we shouldn't really have to wait 15 days to call it graffiti and then give another 15 days to take it off. So I think that's a good change. And with that, I'll recommend it to you.
All right, we discussed this in our work meeting. Any questions since the discussion then? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve ordinance 2023-25, an ordinance of Tooele City enacting Tooele City Code Sections 8-4-7 to reinstate civil penalties for public nuisances.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Councilman Graff, a second from Councilwoman Manzione. We'll take it to a vote. Councilman McCall?
Aye.
Councilman Hanson?
Aye.
Councilman Graff?
Aye.
Councilwoman Manzione?
Aye.
I'm Councilman Brady. I also vote aye. That passes 5-0. Item 13 is Resolution 2023-24, a resolution of the Twila City Council approving the form of a lease agreement with Hoot Owl Leasing LLC for a cell tower site, presented by Roger Baker.
Thank you. You're familiar with the local business Christensen and Griffith. They are in the general construction and concrete industries, but also are in the cell tower industry. They acquired the old Weiniger Tower that was located further east of here. That has come down, and they would like to build a new tower on the site of our former sewer treatment plant. We've been going back and forth for a few months as to where's the optimal location, given other property owners, the future Tooele Boulevard, potential development in Copper Canyon to the east, and where utilities are. And after a lot of consultation, site visits, and thought, this is the site we recommend to you as the optimal site, and it is acceptable to Christensen and Griffith. They have formed a new company for this venture called Hoot Owl Leasing, so that's why the resolution has that name in the lease documents. They are currently operating a temporary tower in a different location on this site under a temporary license agreement. They're paying $750 a month and will continue to pay that under the lease after they build their new tower and move the facilities to that tower. The lease agreements are long and detailed and complicated to address. These agreements are developed by the cell tower industry. The one you have in front of you was the subject of quite a bit of negotiation a number of years ago between myself and the company representing T-Mobile. So I have a level of confidence in it. It's not just the form that the industry provides. It has been altered to serve the city's interests as well. That's the presentation I have for you tonight. Do you have any questions or concerns I can address?
So I think this is different than the Elton Park. This is saying that they're actually going to build a tower, right? And if they don't, my question is there a time frame where they had the chance to build it and now they don't?
In fact, the terms are the same as I negotiated this agreement for the Elton Park site and was able to use it for this site as well. So yes, there are some deadlines within which they have to get moving, and there are some extension periods that they can invoke, but if they don't, then they will forfeit their right to the lease, just as happened on the Elton Park site.
Thank you. Any other questions? I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve Resolution 2023-24.
All right, I'll second his motion. We'll take it to a vote. Councilwoman Manzione?
Aye.
Councilman Graff?
Aye.
Councilman Hanson?
Aye.
Councilman McCall?
Aye.
I'm Councilman Brady. I also vote aye. That passes 5-0. Item 14 is Resolution 2023-44, a resolution of the Twila City Council approving an agreement with SKM for water system PLC and SCADA upgrades, presented by Jamie Grand Prix, the Public Works Director.
Good evening, Council. So I have Resolution 2023-44, which is an agreement with SKM for water system PLC and SCADA upgrades. This is for our culinary water side. Our existing radios are obsolete, so in this project, we wanted to upgrade our radio system, which is still kind of a temporary solution as we're working on getting to the fiber system. So with the new fiber system coming through town, eventually we're trying to get all of our sites on fiber instead of radios. we're still a couple of years out to get that completed, and we've had a lot of just radio issues over the last few months, and so this kind of helps take care of some of that. It's still good as it comes in with fiber, as it's still upgrading PLCs that are also obsolete and are not going to be capable of handling the fiber. So it upgrades those PLCs, 1 for radios for now, and 2 for fiber in the future. And so that's kind of one of the major goals. And the other goal is trying to get our SCADA server secured. I mean, it's secured, it's at the Public Works facility, but just kind of secured at the Public Works facility. This will change the way communications are done and brings it all into the police department, and we'll store it at the police department instead, where we feel that site's a little bit more secure than just our Public Works facility. So that's what this also does, is this will reroute all that comms. A lot of it's kind of coming into here, coming into Grimm's, just coming off of some of the towers, and kind of brings that data into the site where we have a lot of different elevations and whatnot. So we bounce that communications. I'm talking SCADA language, so if you don't understand, you can stop me and I can explain. But it's just kind of, as that communications is being brought across through the radios, it just kind of bounces off different towers and gets it where it needs to be. And so we're trying to redo how that works and getting that so it goes to the police department tower. And so that will take care of that, upgrade some of the PLCs, get some of our PLCs where they need to be, and then as fiber comes in, hopefully get those tied over and get fiber to those. We're hoping that most of our sites will go on fiber, if not all, but we do have a lot of sites that are out of the way that I don't know if we're going to be able to get fiber up to them. If that's the case, then we're still with radios, and so we still need to have a radio path and way of doing radio communications. So with that, we got a price from SKM to do this portion of the project at $210,322.80. And that's where we're at. And so I can answer any questions. We have budget in the water department for this budget, so we have that taken care of.
Any questions from the council?
That was my question.
Where it's coming
Yeah,
from?
it's like you read my
So,
mind.
yeah, I kind of thought that was coming, so I
Read
thought I'd
mine
just throw it
too
out
about the
there.
fiber, if we were spending money and then just going to spend more money later. But it sounds like it's a change that's needed, and then when the fiber comes, we are partly where we need to be, right?
Yeah, because most of our PLCs can't handle fiber.
Okay.
So this will get a PLC that will do fiber, will do the radio, do the fiber, and then when the fiber comes on, we just take the radio off and put the fiber on. We're still just using existing radios, and so we're not trying to spend a whole lot of cost for the radio stuff because we want to be able to use the fiber. So everything that's in here we're spending a lot of money on is to get for fiber.
Great. All right, any other questions? I will make a motion that we approve Resolution 2023-44. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second from Councilman McCall. I heard your name, or your voice louder. All right, I'll take it to a vote. Councilwoman Manzione?
Aye.
Councilman Graff?
Aye.
Councilman Hanson?
Aye.
Councilman McCall?
Aye.
I'm Councilman Brady. I also vote aye. That passes 5-0. Item 15 is Resolution 2023-45, a resolution of the Twila City Council amending the Twila City fee schedule regarding bulk secondary water fees, presented by Jamie Grandpré.
Okay, on this one, Resolution 2023-45, this is our bulk secondary water system that we are working on installing at our facility. A few months ago, you approved me to get a new bulk water system that has taken me a long time to get it installed with contractors and just trying to get it in the ground. And we finally have got most of it in the ground. And so with that, I would like to look at our fee that we charge for this. We've been charging $1.50 per 750 gallons. Now, it's an honor system now, and so, because it's just coming from a fire hydrant. With this new bulk water system, it's all metered. They pay for every drop. And so with that, I think it's also time to look at the cost of this water, right? So the $1.50 per 750 gallons is on our form that we've had for years, for ages, and it has never been looked at. And so I looked at where we're at budget-wise with the water rec, what our kind of yearly budget is, how much water we treat each year to try to get a cost of what that is. And it's still kind of a ballpark or approximate cost because it's still kind of hard as we kind of with budgets and just kind of the total annual water that is treated. But I came up with $4.55 per 1,000 gallons treated. And so I'm proposing that a fee be placed from $1.50 for 750 gallons, which is the current rate, to $4.50 for 1,000 gallons that we can start charging for the bulk water.
Someone explained it in staff meeting is a truck holds how much water, these water
Truck is usually 2,000 to 3,000 gallons, maybe 4 if they've got like a bigger truck. You know, they have a semi with a water tank on it. It's probably more of an 8,000 gallon truck, but we really don't see those coming through. It's more of just your normal kind of, 3,000, 4,000 gallon trucks. So I think that was, we were, $20 or so for one of those, give or take, for each one that comes down and get them.
All I was going to say was, I honestly, I agree with you, but I just feel we ought to keep it, in my mind, making it simple. I wouldn't do 450, I'd do 5 and call it good. You know what I mean? In case they don't have change.
Well, what's going to happen, just so you understand how the bulk system is going to come into play, is they're just going to come in and buy some water, right? They'll come in and buy 50,000 gallons or whatever, and then we'll just charge them for that 50,000 gallons. They'll get a pin for that 50,000 gallons, and that's the pin they use. They plug that pin in. Once that's done, then they'll have to come and pay for more water.
It's like a credit.
Yeah. Okay. But, yeah.
I know they wouldn't drive up with $4.50.
Does our price compare to other cities? I mean, I have no idea. Or did you even look?
It all kind of depends because treatment-wise, it's different. Like we're doing a reuse water. There's not a lot of cities that do a reuse water. A lot of cities are just treating a wastewater and then sending it out to a ditch or a body of water, and that's a cheaper cost for them to do that compared to where we're getting it to a reuse standard. And so it's kind of hard to do, apples to oranges in this case, but that's probably a good going rate for water. At that rate, I mean, our culinary is, yeah.
It sounds way cheap.
It seems really cheap.
Okay. But I'm just taking it from what kind of budget is, like what it costs us to treat the water, So, but I'm open to whatever we want to charge.
Do you anticipate your cost to treat the water may increase in the future?
There's always that chance. I mean, Headworks, the new Headworks facility is probably going to cost a little bit more to operate. So that could, bring a change in cost.
I don't think there's any could about it. We've seen you at every meeting the last few months.
I didn't add the 9 million into this price point, but.
So can we make it $5? Is that everyone okay with that?
My thought is, as long as we, 450 or 5, if we want to save the 2 quarters, as long as we revisit this once we get our Headworks building up, I think that's a responsible thing to do. I'm fine with what we're doing tonight. Let's just keep that in mind because, we're making an investment and then we should try to make sure that what we're providing is equitable and looking to our cost too. So that's just my thought.
So 5 would actually put us, based on your figures, 5 would put us ahead of what you said it cost us to do it. So, yeah.
Okay.
I don't care. I'm good.
So if you raise the fee though, does it have to be equal? Like you've done your budget analysis and said it costs this much, so can you raise it to 5 when?
Right, so the law in Utah is that when you provide a service, like Andrew's department reviewing a subdivision plat, the fees that you charge for that service have to be a reasonable approximation of what it costs you to provide the service. A product is a little different. Take, for example, a cemetery plot. You can charge whatever you want for the cemetery plot, and if someone doesn't want to pay it, they can go to another cemetery. Water is more similar to the product. It's something we make and we can sell it, or we don't have to sell it, but we can. I wouldn't suggest profiting off it and selling it for twice what it costs us to make it. But I think Jamie has been conservative in his estimates of what it costs to produce the water, and that's always a good place to start. So you have some flexibility to come in right at or under what you think it costs, or you can assume some near-term cost increases as you bring on other people or expand your plant or any of those things. So I'm not concerned with a $5 per 1,000 gallon rate. It just depends on where you want to come at as a matter of policy.
My budget number is just based off of just the basic budget. It's not taking in capital facility, stuff like that. It's just the basic budget of treating. So if you wanted to add costs for capital projects or something like that into that, there's, I think, room to do that.
Jamie, I'm sorry, can I ask, does it include things like utilities, insurance for the buildings, all of those soft costs as well?
Those basic costs, yeah, are included
Your
in
transportation, your vehicles, your employees, your gas, all of those things?
Yeah, the budget I'm using is the $3,652,043, which is kind of the basic budget, not counting just like capital projects and the other extras that are usually added on top of that.
I mean, it's 50 cents, but I'm fine either way. I think, yeah.
I'm good with $5.
$5, everyone good with that? We don't want them to not have their
Make
quarters,
Dave
so.
happy about this.
No, it's been nice and telling me to shut up. I'm like,
I think it still seems too cheap, but, okay. Someone want to make a motion?
oh, I'll make the motion.
Dave wants to.
Okay, let me find where I'm at. There we go. Mr. Chair, I make a motion we approve resolution 2023-45 as mentioned at $5 a 1,000 gallons, right?
I'll second.
Motion from Councilman McCall, a second from Councilwoman Manzione. We'll take it to a vote. Councilwoman Manzione?
Aye.
Councilman Graff?
Aye.
Councilman Hanson?
Aye.
Councilman McCall?
Aye.
And Councilman Brady, I also vote aye. That passes 5-0. Thanks, Jamie. Item 16 is Resolution 2023-43, a resolution of the Twila City Council approving insurance coverage for insurance period 2023 through 2024, presented by Michelle Pitt.
Thank you. Twila City employs a comprehensive risk management strategy to avoid harm to persons and property and to decrease claims against the general funds of the city. The city has been insured by the Utah Local Governments Trust since 2018. And since we've been with the trust in 2018, we've had a 33% increase in vehicles, 67% increase in payroll, 40% increase in full-time employees, and an increase in the part-time employees as well. Our premium last year, for last year's insurance period, was $268,924. For the 2023-2024 insurance period, the premium will be $290,862, and that breaks down to $185,880 for the liability coverage, $86,620 for property coverage, and $18,362 for the auto coverage.
Any questions or comments? Gotta have insurance. So
Insurance.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve Resolution 2023-43, approving insurance coverage for insurance period 2023-24.
I'll second.
Got a motion from Councilwoman Manzio and a second from Councilman McCall. We'll take it to a vote. Councilman McCall?
Aye.
Councilman Hanson?
Aye.
Councilman Graff?
Aye.
Councilwoman Manzione?
Aye.
I'm Councilman Brady. I also vote aye. That passes 5-0. Item 17 is invoices and purchase orders presented by Michelle Pitt.
Thank you. I had sent you guys an email about some emergency repairs we wanted to make on 100 East. We had an exposed and unfinished storm drain there that we felt posed a safety threat. And so I'd asked for your okay to move ahead with getting those repairs done. I did receive a majority of an okay to move ahead, but we wanted to bring this back to ratify it in this meeting. So this is an invoice from Broken Arrow for those emergency repairs at 100 East, and it is for $35,947.09. And then I have one more. This is an invoice from Settlement Canyon Irrigation Company, and we had agreed to pay for a third of the repairs to culvert pipe on 425 West. The Settlement Canyon was going to pay a third, Tooele County was going to pay a third, and then Tooele City would pay a third. Tooele County is not going to pay their third, so we are paying 2/3 of the cost, and it is $46,351. And that's it.
I'll keep my
Are you waiting
comments.
for me to say something?
I'm waiting for you to
Because I
say
was going to ask,
something.
like, why aren't they paying their share?
I'm not going to comment tonight on why the county will not pay, except that they don't believe that it's not their water. But I do want you to know that I have been in negotiations with UDOT. We do know that some of the stormwater that comes off of our main street, SR 36, is directed into that pipeline. And they are willing to negotiate with us and pay the third. So we just need to get some contracts in place, which I will rely heavily on Roger to help get us through that. Historically, we have always worked with the irrigation company when they have these major projects, and Tooele County has normally paid a third. With that not happening, we're reaching out, but UDOT has been very, very good to work with, so I do appreciate that, and we will get this in place and get a third of that, or half of that 2/3 reimbursed to Tooele City. And in the future, Roger will also help. I'll work with him to get an agreement in place with the irrigation company for future projects for the use of their pipe.
Thank you. Any other questions? Is that the last of the invoices? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll entertain a motion for the invoices and purchase orders.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the invoices and purchase orders as presented tonight.
I'll second.
Okay, motion from Councilman Graff, a second from Councilman McCall. We'll take it to a vote. Councilwoman Manzione?
Aye.
Councilman Graff?
Aye.
Councilman Hanson?
Aye.
Councilman McCall?
Aye.
And Councilman Brady, I also vote aye. Item 18
you.
is, thanks, Michelle, the minutes from May 17th, 2023 City Council and RDA work meeting, and then the May 17th, 2023 City Council business meeting. I do have a few corrections, starting with the work meeting. Jim Bolser, his name was still on the list as being present. As much as we miss Jim, he was not actually present. That's on page 1. And then on page 4, it's item 6. It was a closed meeting. The vote wasn't on there, so we're recommending that the voting information be added, how the council voted. And then also on that page, it just says the meeting began at 6:38. We're recommending it says PM. And that's all for the work meeting. The business meeting, Jim Bolser was not present at that, so removing his name. Correcting the spelling on Captain Lonnie Collins. He was present at that meeting. So his first name, and his last name, just correction to both spelling. I think that's all. Anyone else have any other recommended changes?
Just those two.
Okay. I will make a motion that we approve the minutes with the recommended changes stated.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We'll take it to a vote. Councilman McCall?
Aye.
Councilman Hanson?
Aye.
Councilman Graff?
Aye.
Councilwoman Manzione?
Aye.
I'm Councilman Brady. I also vote aye. That passes 5-0. Item 19 is to adjourn. We're adjourned at 8:40 PM.